Hey everyone. Alright, so today we're going to go ahead and look at another Jack Relic review. Today we're going to watch a Marvel movie. Yes, you know me, I love watching Marvel movies, and there are just so many that can come out each time, every year. So naturally there's a lot to talk about with how many Marvel films come out. Nowadays, when you think of Marvel movies, mostly the only thing that comes to your mind is with the MCU. Marvel's Cinematic Universe is naturally one of the only cases of Marvel movies coming out these days. Because it's an expanding franchise. It's not one of those franchises that starts and ends easy like that. It just goes in any direction. It'll have different franchises inside the franchise and just tell different stories, expanding with new characters and whatnot. It's kind of like the Saturday Night Live of movies. It doesn't worry about concluding a franchise, concludes different stories and just continues making new ones, adding new characters and all sorts of crap. So yeah, it expands all the time. And of course it has its ups and downs. We'll always enjoy the stuff that's amazing, and the stuff that's not amazing we like to sometimes just ignore. Anyway, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at their newest film to come out, one to introduce a new team of superheroes to their franchise. A team that has previously gotten some Marvel movies in the past, however, hasn't really gotten any that are, say, acclaimed as as amazing Marvel films. That being the Fantastic Four. I'm sure if you're a Marvel fan, you know pretty well about the Fantastic Four. A group of 4 superheroes who each have their own superpowers they get after an incident going into space, and they use them to become an awesome, fun, beloved team of heroes and protectors. You got someone who has the ability to use elastic arms or whatever, Elastic Man, whatever you want to call him. There's the Human Torch, where, man who can make fire, a woman who could turn invisible, and a thing that can just be strong and rock type, whatever. I don't know. It's hard to explain when you think of it like that, but it's still a pretty unique, fun group. And, you definitely would think a group like that would make for some pretty amazing films. Unfortunately, that hasn't really been the case. There has been a couple of Fantastic Four movies, and none of them really were anything that many people loved. There was a 1994 film that never came out, but the people who were able to find it agree it's pretty shitty. Or maybe that's just based off of how the production was. Either way, that one didn't really make any light, so I don't know if we should count that. It's a shitty superhero movie that never came out. Now let's talk about the one that did come out. The first Fantastic Four movie from 2005, coming out the exact day I was born. I know it's kind of off topic, but that movie came out on July 8th, 2005, which was the exact same date I was born. So I share me and a Marvel movie are twins. Anyway, that movie was, to me, not good. I didn't really think it was good. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It definitely tried, but it just didn't work to the advantage. It focused too much on silly antics, didn't really make for a endearing superhero film. And the same can be said about the sequel that was released for it, Rise of the Silver Surfer. Again, it had a lot of potential. It definitely looked like it tried hard enough, but didn't really give the superheroes the kind of respect that we'd want for them. We want to see cool action and not all this silly nonsense. But yeah, truth be told, those 2 movies just were not to their potential. But then Marvel decided to go ahead and reboot this series of heroes again in 2015, giving them a more darker tone type of movie. And one that I consider to be one of the worst superhero movies of all time. Many other people can agree with that. It's pretty awful. It's just, I can't say much about it. It's just terrible. The acting's bad. The effects are bad. The pacing's bad. It's so bad, man. Not many people want to talk about it anymore. But yeah, the 2015 remake of the Fantastic Four was another attempt to giving them a fun origin, but failed because it sucked. Anyway, now let's talk about their attempt at joining the MCU. This is a movie called Fantastic Four First Steps. Their first ever steps into the MCU. We've seen them before in film, but we haven't seen them as part of this expanding franchise. So now that they have joined this expanding franchise and are a interesting type scenario in this case, like now we have a group of 60 superheroes played by interesting actors. Does it work? Can a movie that takes place in the MCU work? Can the MCU curse help with this Fantastic Four movie? Can we get a Fantastic Four movie that's actually, fantastic? I had to. I'm going to be saying that a lot, probably. Well, we'll see. Can we finally get it with them joining the MCU? Well, let's take a look. So, of course, let's talk about the movie's genres and how it portrays those. The movie really just only consists of 3 genres. Each of them are utilized in the movie a lot, like a lot. First, of course, we gotta talk about the action. How does the action in this movie work? It's about as good as a Marvel movie can get. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I really think my opinion on action for every MCU film can be the same. Maybe not every MCU movie has awesome top tier action scenes, but in most cases, you get the idea. It's superheroes jumping around, using their powers, going all crazy, CGI. That's pretty much what you get with every MCU film in its action. And again, sometimes it's pretty damn awesome. Other times it's really, that's kind of what I think of it. The action in the MCU never really got awful, or at least from what I've seen, but it definitely has its high and low points. This movie reaches sort of a almost high point, a point where, see, this is Endgame action, and this is the Fantastic Four's action. It's at that point where it's really great, but would it be something I look at and it's excitement and be like, oh man, that was so cool? No. However, for a Fantastic Four movie, I think that's still pretty good. The movie's action is mostly, of course, them using their powers, and I like this case around. They utilize them in a way where it's more so they are very used to them. They put care into them. I think my one thing with the other Fantastic Four movies that people don't talk about is probably one of the weaker aspects is how silly they portrayed our powers. I mean, they're silly powers when you think about it, but they do need to be utilized in a serious manner since they are superheroes. I think that's what this movie does best. Them utilizing their powers more seriously than in other films. Now, of course, that's not all the time. They do still have silly moments with them, but when it comes to the action scenes, they do have a good sense to them. It's like they know how to use them more so. They're not trying to get the hang of them or trying to have fun with them. They're using them when they know it's right. There are a couple scenes where we see them use them for silly moments, but when it comes to the actual moments where they have to fight, you really do feel them being used to their powers. Because with the other movies, it's when they use them, they're usually like, all right, do this. Oh, I'm doing this, or flame on, woo. You know, they're just so excited with their powers. But here, they're used to them, so you can definitely tell you're having fun with them, and I think that works for the action scenes when they're not too focused on how excited they are, what they can do. They're just doing them. That's probably the best way to describe the action in this movie. Good because it's not overexcited. They don't overexcite it by being as excited. They're because they know they're supposed to take this seriously. They're not going to be over here amazed by the powers they have because they know the powers they have, and they know that right now is the only thing they can do is just use them to help defeat the evil. And when it comes to when they actually have to fight, you do feel the tension. They do try to make the tension to where you really do get what they're feeling, because even though their powers may seem OP and so easy for battle, this movie shows that they can be tough to use. Like Mr. Fantastic's ability to stretch out is shown to be problematic at some points. Like there are some moments in the movie where he uses them, but it don't always work. There are times where they can sometimes he can sometimes be tortured with it. He can still struggle even if he has that cool ability. Or with the Human Torch. I mean, lighting on fire and going out should be awesome. There should be no problems with it. But this movie does show that there is some issues with having that kind of power. And, it's not something that'll always save your life. And those are the kind of superhero movies I like. The kind that show that a superhero with powers still has its weakness. It doesn't show that they're perfect. They can always get things done pitch easily. It shows that even with such awesome powers, there is a good way for them to get defeated. I mean, I know pretty much every superhero movie does that, but I think it's fun to see. It sounds like me saying it's fun to watch them suffer, but no, it's fun to know that they can suffer, know that there's no superhero that can use their powers and always succeed with it. It's good to know that they're able to fail sometimes and not have the powers that are too perfect for them. All right, enough of the powers. Let's talk about adventure. How the adventure portion of this movie works. Well, this movie's adventure is they go to space. And yeah, you get what that is. This world that they live in is 60s vibe. And with all due respect, I think it's probably one of the best looking sets in any MCU film. It really does capture that sort of 60s esque vibe to it, but also the color scheme too. The color scheme of the world fits with the Fantastic Four, white and blue. That's pretty much what the color scheme is, white and blue. And there's a lot of it in this world. It's funny. It's like this whole world decided to color itself after a team that saved them. So we have a white and blue kind of world that is bright, is 60s esque, and it really does look nice. It doesn't look too vintage silly to where it looks like I'm looking at a on-set location at a backlot from the Walt Disney Studios tour, but rather you really do dive into it. That's another thing I like of movies, when they have such a silly set that they're able to actually portray to where we don't think of it like it's from a studio lot, but we think of it like it's an actual location. They're able to turn such a silly set into an actual location and make us go into it. I really love that. I love seeing how 60s this movie looks. Everything's all blue and white. It's all bright and everything. It's not too modern, hip like the 2000s movies, nor is it too dark and grady like the 2015 film. It's just a nice, bright world that fits with its 60s time period and, gets us all the fun vibe of what time period this movie's supposed to be set in. And I do gotta admit, it is fun seeing an MCU movie set in an old time period, because I'm getting a little tired of these these MCU movies being like, yo, I'm trending on TikTok, watch this, guys. Like, I'm not trying to see superheroes get TikTok fans. I'm just trying to see them do what they're supposed to do, okay? I don't need too much of that fame to come from on their smartphones or whatever. It's good to know that they have what they have at that time and see it all in this movie. I want more MCU movies like that coming out now. I think that's what this movie did for me. It made me want to see more MCU films that take place in an older time period, so we can see how they work. I do want to wonder how they're gonna make it work with time travel, because we know that they're gonna have to meet the other heroes at some point, so they'll have to time travel. But we'll see where that goes. Just have to wait and see. But yes, in terms of adventure, it's mostly running around that cool set. And when they go to space, it's, of course, an entire CGI way. It's not as... The space aspect isn't as great as the Earth world. So I guess you could argue that when we go into space, it becomes underwhelming. But not too underwhelming, because we know they're part of the story. It's just one of those cases where they make space look underwhelming and Earth look amazing. It's like a opposite route. You'd think that space would be the coolest looking part, and Earth would just be boring, but it's the other way around. So I guess that's one thing you gotta give this movie credit for, making our world look more cool and fun than space. Speaking of which, science fiction. This movie throws as much science fiction in it as it can. There's like so many sci-fi moments in the film, not from the sake of the guys having superpowers, but more so what they want to do. Like, this movie actually features moments where they try to come up with plans to saving their world, and in some cases they're scientific plans. There's like one point they want to try and move the Earth. They want to try and teleport it far away so they can get away from Galactus, an evil villain from his own planet, who's ginormous. That fails though. Like, they set it up like it's going to work and we're going to succeed, but no, it fails, so they just have to try something else. Then the next plan is to bring Galactus here. And that plan is what happens and what we get to the action point. Galactus is basically like this ginormous version of... he's like Thanos in a way, where he's threatening to an entire planet, but I wouldn't compare him too much to Thanos because their motives are different. Anyway, this guy's huge to the Earth world, so they plan on having him come to Earth, and he is, of course, super ginormous. He breaks through everything. It's like Godzilla, per se. But I do like how this movie makes sure all of its science fiction makes sense. Anytime there's something that we would be like, oh my god, that's so stupid, I can't buy it, they try to analyze it as much as possible. They try to make sure it makes sense, and there, that's when we're like, oh, okay, they're saying it well enough. And like, their powers are again are utilized to the right manner. So, they don't get too excited with it because they're used to them. But they're also pretty cool to see. Granted, I will admit, there was a couple moments where we saw what else the Human Torch and the Invisible Woman can do. Because apparently, the Invisible Woman doesn't only have the ability to turn invisible; she can also do force fields. That, to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of that. Other extra power. It's like, dude, you're Invisible Woman. I don't see what force fields need to have to do with your invisible skills. But I mean, hey, I guess they just did that because they thought invisibility wasn't enough for her to be cool. But I don't know. I don't buy it. Still, though, they don't force on. I mean, they do. We do see her do that a lot. But I mean, hey, in all due respect, it's kind of cool because we do see her do more force fielding than invisibility this time. So it's like she might as well just be the force field woman, the all the force power she has or whatever. Because we do see that more in this movie than her invisibility. It's her invisibility is really only used very briefly compared to the other big force field powers or whatever you want to call it that she has. I don't even know if I'm calling it right. But anyway, yeah. Because of that, I guess I can give it a pass. So, because, we don't have to dive too much into the extra power she has. But that's for the Human Torch. I remember there's one moment where we see that he can actually consume fire. Not only can he catch on fire, but he also is able to consume it. He's able, like if there was a fire out, he can apparently get all the fire and consume it into him. So that's how he gets rid of fires. He just grabs all the fire and takes it with him. That was a little corny to think about, but I mean that was only in one scene, so I guess that's fine enough. I guess. I mean, a part of me is wondering why that makes sense, but because it was only one scene, I won't buy into it too much. But anyway, as for the rest of the movie, it is just them thinking of scientific ideas, and we see Galactus is this man who comes to Earth, and they end up tossing him into a black hole. It's pretty corny on one hand, but on the other hand, it's still lots of fun to watch, and they do, again, analyze it as much as they can to make sure we can understand it better. So if you're a scientist, you probably won't understand it well enough. You'll still be thinking that's stupid. But if you're not, if you're just like me and you're just ready to see what kind of science makes logical sense in a objective way, then yeah, this probably is a great movie for that. A great movie for people to learn the ways of science that a superhero movie like the Fantastic Four can pull off. Not the kind of science that actually makes sense all the time, but the kind that this movie is able to explain. And gotta give a movie credit when it's able to explain such silly kinds of science. Alright, now on to the plot. And this is where things get interesting. You know how I said that Superman, the new movie that just came out a couple weeks ago, you know how that movie was a reboot of the hero, but this new story that's told isn't an origin story, but rather just a new take on the hero where he is in this new adventure that he ends up being caught through a lot of controversy, so he has to try and defeat his arch nemesis so he can get the respect he deserves and hope that a new society can work with him after all these years of fighting. Well, funny enough, that's exactly what this movie is too. The Fantastic Four First Steps is not an origin story. No, we're not seeing it. This time we're seeing practically the same kind of idea that Superman had, where it's instead a new take on the characters, where they've had so much success after all these years, and are now having to dodge controversy because of the new threat that they face. So they have to try and work together to defeat it and hope that they can get their respect back from all the people who used to put all their faith and love for them. Now, before you say, okay, so this is just copying Superman, that's the thing. It's not. This is just coincidence, actually. The plot alone is very different from Superman. I'm not going to compare it too much because there is a big difference in this. Again, it is the Fantastic Four now having all sorts of success, everyone loving them, putting their hopes onto them. They have such a big popularity and cult following to people, and that's what the movie follows. But it also follows the idea of how there's a new baby being born. That the Invisible Woman, or more say Sue Storm, which is her name, she's giving birth. She has a child that's being born, and they're worried about if this child will become a threat to them or hopefully join their side. And when they go to Earth to try and not Earth, when they go to the planet, when they learn about Galactus and have to defeat him, they learn that Galactus wants their child and if they give them the child, he will leave Earth alone. But they deny the request, and because of that, there's controversy. And yeah, they get controversy because of that, so now they have to work out how they can defeat Galactus, as well as Silver Surfer. I haven't brought up Silver Surfer yet. Yeah, Silver Surfer, you could argue, is the main villain of the movie because she is mostly who they're fighting, but she's more so a minion in the case of that Galactus is the real threat. She's more so the one that he sends to go defeat them. And for the most part, I feel like her screen time was a little briefer than you would think. She definitely doesn't appear in this movie as much as you would expect, so yeah. Maybe in a sense it's like, why wasn't she in this movie more if she's the main villain? But that's kind of just why I believe she isn't the main villain, because she's just a minion. And of course, by the end, she turns against Galactus and joins their side. And so she sacrifices herself to save them. So yeah, really, Galactus is the real threat of the movie. And yeah, he wants the child, but they don't give him the child. And she ends up giving birth onto the ship, on the rocket ship they're on. So they have to do the whole thing on that ship. It's weird, all nonsense. And throughout the movie, it's them trying to come up with plans to defeat Galactus, gain the respect back from all the people who used to have so much love for them, but now aren't really focused that much because of this Galactus incident. And they have to make sure that their child that they now have will hopefully be raised good. So that's 3 things they have to do throughout this movie. And it's all done tremendously. First, I'm impressed with what this movie does. Not only am I impressed that they're able to tell a new story, focusing on a new kind of Fantastic Four without it being an origin story again. Again, same thing with Superman. But to me, this one actually does it, dare I say it, better than Superman. I'm not going to say too much problems with Superman. Its story was good too. But if you watch my review, you remember I was a little complaining about how it kind of left out too many things. I feel like there were still some things that could have been introduced for the character. With this movie, they introduce everything well enough. Like, the opening of the movie actually explains to us their story quickly enough. So even if you are hoping for an origin story, you will still sort of get it. Not in the sense that that's what the entire movie is, but the opening of the film starts with a little explanation on how the superhero came to be and what makes them popular and why they're where they are now. It pretty much does the one thing I was complaining about Superman doing. Superman opens abruptly without really any explanation of what previously happened anytime soon. But this movie, it gives us the runner-up, so we don't have to have too many questions on what happened in that time. We know what happens, so thankfully I'll praise this movie for that case. Another thing I talked about with the Superman review was how the new cast does, and in all due respect, I'm not going to be talking about that with this movie. Not because I don't have opinions on the cast, actually, that's kind of what it is, but more so because it's just a Fantastic Four. It's a basic idea. I mean, Mr. Fantastic is a dude, and that's fair enough. I mean, Pedro Pascal he's an actor, he is a dude, so it makes sense why he would be someone like Mr. Fantastic. I'm sure it was bizarre for some people who expected John Krasinski to be him after we saw him in Doctor Strange, but I guess they were just like, nah, we don't want Jim anymore. Let's get that Mandalorian guy on here and let him be the elastic dude. He's cool. Then of course there's Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, and everyone has talked about how she's the best performance in the movie, which is true, she is. Her performance in this movie is great. She's not as sexy as someone like Jessica Alba from the original Fantastic Four movies, so sorry for you people. Sorry that you're not going to get a sexy Invisible Woman, but you will definitely still get a very emotional one. And for someone who's invested with superhero movies, I think that's the best you can get. I mean, I'm not someone who wants to focus on how sexy a superhero can be. Wouldn't mind if that was the case, but I'm glad that they made the character very emotional and had a enough to her character to where we actually cared about her more. Not that I didn't care about her at all in the other movies, but she really shined enough for this film. I Gonna be honest, I don't know much about the other actors. I think Joseph Quinn played Human Torch. I don't really know about him that much in other films, so I don't know. But he does pull off the Human Torch well enough. He's cool and hip. He's kind of like Chris Evans was in the original film. So I guess that works fine because honestly, I think that's the best way you can see someone with the Human Torch. The younger person who has that cool vibe to him, but really loves his job. And then, of course, there's the thing. I will admit, I do sort of wish they did some more practical things with him, but at the same time, I'm glad his design is what it is because I do like the rock texture on his body. It's nice and realistic. It doesn't look too ugly and over exaggerated like the 2015 movie, God forbid, but I do think it works nice enough. So that's really the best I can say about the actors. There's enough. I don't want to compare them too much. They're good. They work the roles well enough. They're good to hold up the movie, and that's good enough. As for the plots, I loved it. I loved the plot of this movie. It really did give us the idea for the characters. We didn't have to be too distracted by confusion. We got through every plot detail nicely. The emotion worked really well. And by the time the movie ended, it really had a good vibe to it. And I got pretty satisfied with how everything ended. Of course, they saved the day, but of course, also, there was a lot that they go through with it. And I really was satisfied with what this movie's closing card was. A card where we know that they defeated Galactus by dropping him in the black hole. Like I said, the Silver Surfer sacrificed herself to save them by pushing him into the black hole where she would go too. And naturally, they end off by continuing their abilities to raise their new child, who they seem to notice will probably end up being good for them. So they'll probably end up being the Fantastic Five, which would be very annoying if that ends up being the sequel's title, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Either way, I love this movie. I thought the Fantastic Four first steps, it was great. Not great compared to the other movies, but like great in general. How great? 8 out of 10. Yeah, 8 out of 10. The best superhero movie I've seen this year so far. I'm being serious. I liked it more than Superman. I liked it more than Thunderbolts. I just really thought that this movie had it all for me. It improved the Fantastic Four as characters, made their movie more tolerable and superhero-like, to where it's not too as many silly antics or bad dark tone moments as the other films, but it really did keep a good mood for the characters, but also a good mood for a superhero movie in general. Yeah, I feel that way. It's not pitch perfect, there are moments that do make this not one of the best superhero movies of all time, but it's still a really great one. Visually nice, emotionally nice, characters are fun, the story's fun, it's fun. If you're a Marvel fan, you will have fun with this movie. And honestly, I really wish more enthusiasts will get into this movie like I did. I want people to agree with me. It's a great movie. I loved it. So yeah, Fantastic Four first steps, the true Fantastic Four movie we always needed. All right, well, that was good to know. We got a Fantastic Four movie that worked. And now there's also some interest to know that the movie also closed in a post-credits scene. Yeah, let's talk about that real quick, where we saw Doctor Doom. Now, Doctor Doom is, of course, their leading villain of the series, so you would think that he would be the main villain of this film. But they started off with Silver Surfer instead and saved Doctor Doom for the after credits so he can become their new friend in the future. But why is that? Because apparently they're casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. It's a whole thing. They're going to be the leads of Avengers Doomsday, that new Avengers film coming out next year. It's a whole excitement. I'm still curious on what to expect from there. They've already announced a lot of things with it. How there's going to be a shitload of stars, a ton of nonsense. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what goes from there. But judging by how this movie played out, I think that with the Fantastic Four joining the crew of the Avengers for this new film, it's going to be pretty damn crazy. I don't know if I can work in a review on it for how crazy it sounds, but until it comes out, just have to keep thinking, what could it be?